Hey there, glad to see you back. We're just over halfway through the Civil War event here on the channel, and I think it is time that we take a moment to reflect. So far, I've done my best to zoom in and show the nuance of such a large-scale event, how it's affected relationships and families both within the super community and those of everyday citizens. We've speculated how this issue could grow from the Civil War to a war with Atlantis, from a US issue to a global one. And as we zoom out for a change, we take our thoughts to the stars. We find that we are not alone. It's Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, who is also in deep thought about the current state of the world. The Sentry is on the short list of Marvel's version of Superman. Some say Hyperion, some say Sentry. But Robert stole an experimental upgraded version of the super soldier serum called the Golden Sentry Serum. It was developed after World War II in the nuclear age, designed to grant abilities well beyond those of Captain America. Sentry is insanely powerful. I mean, beyond super strength, super speed, senses, and so on. Sentry is immortal and nigh invulnerable. He virtually cannot die, has the power of exploding stars, capable of light projection like energy blasts, lightning bolts, and so much more. So again, a candidate for Marvel's Superman in terms of abilities. He could easily stop this conflict. If he wanted to, he could rip Spider-Man's arms off. He could toss Cap into deep space and say, "What resistance?" He admits that he could kill Cap. He could kill them all. But what would that do? It's not his place. He thinks he is too powerful to fight in this war and has come to the moon to meditate, to gain perspective, to find his place in the world. However, he had forgotten that the Inhumans lived on the moon, just as they had forgotten about their history with Sentry. You see, this was a really brilliant concept by Sentry co-creator Rick Veitch to suggest to Paul Jenkins that his Sentry character could have an intricately woven back history into the Marvel universe. Rather than creating a new character just jumping onto the scene in the late 90s and early 2000s, what if he had been there all along and some massive event caused everyone to forget every interaction that they had ever had with him? And they created mock covers for issues throughout the years, and in a Marvel Knights 5-issue miniseries, he makes a historical debut. I, for one, love the concept of rooting new characters into the timeline, much like they did later with Adam Brashear, the Blue Marvel, who I still haven't had a chance to cover on this channel, but I'm getting there, man. I ain't forgot you. Back to the Sentry, who's being randomly attacked by the Inhumans. Again, they do not remember him, and as far as they can tell, he's just a human on their land without permission. He's able to subdue them enough to prove that he means them no harm, while demonstrating enough power to prove that he could harm them if he wished, but rather subduing them indicates his passive intention. He's granted an audience with Black Bolt, Medusa, and the rest of the Inhuman royal court. And while before the king and queen, another Inhuman searches the mind of Sentry and learns of their former escapades. She tells the royals of this, and they agree to see him as an ally. And though he does reject them probing his mind any further, he agrees to share with them the current troubles on Earth. As the Inhumans are secluded on the moon, it's not like they really have TV or anything. They really don't know anything that's happened on Earth in quite some time. Some of them know bits of what took place during M-Day, but they hadn't heard everything that had led up to it, from Fury's secret war to House of M to Decimation. All the fear and pent-up hostility that directly led to this point. And they request that he stay the night, before finding somewhere else to think. Knowing how they are about their customs, Sentry agrees to stay. Late in the night, while contemplating leaving, Sentry is approached by Crystal. Now, they had had a bit of a fling in the past, and though she couldn't remember it, she could sense it. She was drawn to him in some way. And after a kiss, Robert pushes her away. He admits that some time ago, they did have an affair, but he is now currently married. And just then, at the worst possible time, Tony Stark, Iron Man's come to bring Bob home, to have him join the fight and to help bring a quicker end to this conflict before more lives are lost. And Sentry holds a strong opinion that if Tony is to continue, it will only lead to the death of Captain America. He knows how Steve is. He's a soldier above all. When he fights for a cause, he puts his life on the line and is willing to die for it. And he asks Iron Man if he is willing to kill Captain America? But Tony refuses to answer such a question. He believes with his entire being that Cap will surrender. He will have time to sit in jail and think about what he has done and come around and ultimately rejoin the fight. But that optimism is interrupted by the Inhumans, who are not impressed to have another uninvited guest. Long story short, Sentry agrees to leave with Tony and to join his side. Oh, we're not quite done yet though. You see, after returning to Earth, Sentry begins working with Reed and Tony on Project 42. And while in the early stages of building the portals to the negative zone, they cause an anomaly, a fold in space-time within the negative zone that reaches across time, calling out to a powerful source known as the Negabands, pulling their wielder through the portal and into the lab. Captain Mar-vell. Guys, I am a massive Mar-vell fan. Now, depending on when this comes out, I either already have or will very soon have a 2 cents on the Kree Space Captain. So for a longer explanation of his history, check there. But for now, what's important to know isn't his origins, it's his end. You see, this version of Marv was pulled out of the negative zone from an earlier point in the timeline, because as of the Civil War, Marv was dead. He had been killed by Nitro. Yes, that Nitro. During an earlier battle with him, he had been exposed to a toxin that actually gave him cancer. That's right, it wasn't even a blast from Nitro that killed him, it was cancer. And he went surrounded by his closest friends and the world's biggest heroes. I mean, look at this. Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Thor, Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym, Hank McCoy, Hulk, and then struggling to stand, being held up by Adam freaking Warlock, Rick Jones. Poor guy. Look, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. But in order to learn of his fate, in order to be allowed to stay in the present, Mar-vell had to agree to assist Tony and the pro-registration team. Iron Man, Reed, and Pym couldn't risk a cosmic powerhouse on the other side. And what is it that they have old Marv doing? Well, wielding the Negabands gives him a unique connection to the negative zone. And once their Supermax prison was complete, they made him Warden. This all plays out in the Civil War tie-in, The Return. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned for what we've got next.